That's a very, very accurate, characteristic that you've got there, Arnab, because, even when we are sitting here and discussing something that, is completely undeniable, then our American counterparts are still throwing stones, saying like, of course, India wants cheaper oil. Well, first and foremost, if India didn't step in at this particular point in time and start buying Russian oil in scopes, the world oil market would have been in such shambles, because that's a huge part of the market that you're taking out of the conversation, and that makes the prices go up every time. So, this whole, but they're still kind of trying to hit you on the spot, saying, look, they want cheaper oil, they're making money. Everybody would do that. I think that this is something that we've spoken about many times, basically. There's a new kind of world order in a way. There's the global South. There's this kind of slightly insulting, Western term of developing nations, some of which have very much developed by now, but they're still developing because, who's developed nations, who they are. We won't name any names. The developed nations, at least two of which have had really disastrous elections, just, in the weeks before this week.
Yes.
And we've seen some incredible results of those elections. And then we're all obviously keeping tuned for November to see what comes out of the US election. And then we'll see, who's talking then.
Yes.
And then,
so we are therefore, if I may say so, Tatiana, it would not be wrong to say, my own estimation is that we are in for a very interesting period globally, Shravan, and I'd like to take in on that. And I'd like to bounce that off Adele from Washington, who's at the Gold Institute. Adele, today America is in a soup, we all know. It's quite a pitiable situation if you see the presidential race that's going on, and our sympathies for the ups and downs and vagaries, and of course thank you for the entertainment that the American elections are providing globally with your senior citizens. But my question is about, look at strategically. We just had the Russia Today correspondent talk about pragmatic relationship, India, China, Russia. I have my doubts on it because we have a strong problem with China, but we are mature in the way we deal with it. Look at NATO on the other hand, Adele. France is crashing, there are riots out there, far left, far right. At war. The UK economy contracted 0.1% in July. And when it jumped to 0.2%, there were celebrations on BBC. We are back. It's a reality. Germany has gone through a recession last year. German GDP shrunk. There are serious problems. Question is, Adele, I believe today the West has no leverage, no ability to pressurize countries like India or China or Russia anymore. I'd like your response to, and it's in that backdrop that this visit is happening. Adele.
Arnab, great to be on with you again. I have to say, I think that it's a very bold statement to say the U.S. has, and the West in particular, has no leverage. I think that leverage will always remain so long as the United States exists in its current state or form, whatever it may be. I think that of course, the new NATO leadership, Mark Rutte, has shown direct bias, I guess, towards Ukraine. I think that there's definitely something to be said about America's stance and appearance on a global stage, looking a little bit weaker based on the current situation. You saw the recent, obviously, President Biden isn't really fit to serve another 4 years, but he seems to be the candidate that the Democrats want to keep as their candidate. I think it strengthens Trump's prospects. That being said, I do see a more strategic shift towards strength for America should Trump get in for a second term. Just going back to the whole America having leverage point of view perspective, I do believe that India's choice, Narendra Modi's choice to go to Russia, to Moscow, to meet with Putin, is a continuation of their neutral stance, their pragmatism. And you have to really look at it, I believe, through the lens of this is also a geopolitical proxy, you want to call it a battle between, of course, India, China, and you have America and...
How is that?
Sorry?
No, how is that? I take strong exception. I would like Abhijit to come. How do you describe Narendra Modi's visit to Russia as having anything to do with the Chinese? On the contrary. On the contrary, I would say we have a border dispute with the Chinese, but as two large populous nations, one of the largest economies in the world, we have our own interests. Abhijit, would you like to respond to that rather sweeping statement that has come in from Adele?
Look, India's perspective is very clear. We are nobody's proxy, and we have our own interests that we will follow, and we want to be multi-aligned. We will work with everybody. And when it comes to the relationship with Russia, it is one of India's top three international relationships. The other one is with the US, and the other one with China. And when it comes to the India-Russia relationship, it is out of the top three relationships, it is the one with the most amount of mutual respect, and it is the one with the least amount of mutual hostility. So Russia is extremely important for India. We have to understand, remember that Russia is a near superpower, the second most powerful nation in the world. The US will talk a lot about China, but it is Russia that scares them the most. And it is Russia that allows India the leverage and the leeway that we need to maneuver diplomatically with the US and also with China. And India's relationship with Russia is also something that helps Russia offset the pressure that comes from China because of their, let's say, no limits relationship. So it's an extremely important relationship for India. And there is so much that both the countries can gain from each other. Russia is still India's number one military partner, defense exporter. It is India's India's major exporter of petroleum and petroleum gas and petrochemicals and fertilizers and so much more. And it's not just what we are we're trading with each other, but overall the relationship is, like other people have said, it's withstood the test of time. And India will need Russia in the future because the relationship with the US is extremely, let's say, transactional. Let's say India takes certain actions for its own self-interest, for its own national interest, self-defense, and the Americans may impose sanctions in the future on India. It can happen. Let's not forget that. So in that case, the relationship with Russia will be very important, and so on. So India's perspective is different. We are nobody's proxy. We are on our own. We are, let's say, we are probably the fourth or fifth most important and powerful nation in the world right now. If you calculate the overall hard power. So we are no one's proxy. That we have to understand very clearly.
Abhijit, you see, obviously at that level, every relationship is transactional, but there are certain values. What we are seeing in this particular instances, that there is triangulation happening. So Swasti, for example, Dr. Swasti Rao, she has been writing about the recent pattern that has emerged in Russia's tilt towards China. That's an area of concern, right, Swasti? So when Prime Minister meets President Putin, that should ideally be on the table as one of the issues, if not the major one.
Yes, so good evening to you. Thank you for letting me speak finally. Yes, of course. I mean, one cannot deny the fact that there has been a no-limits friendship between Russia and China. And also, going by absolutely objective markers, you can see the number of times that President Putin has actually traveled to meet President Xi Jinping. Okay, so in the last 10 years, for example, this has been more than 40 times. So I think we need to be very objective when we discuss these. That is a matter of concern. I'm sure this is going to be taken up as well. But at the same time, let me also reiterate that India and Russia remain, the bilateral ties remain important for their own reasons, and Russia will always be important for India, because it is going to be an important part of the Eurasian theater, number one. And the other thing is also about a national interest. So just talking about, not going around bashing other countries, I don't think I would. Yeah. Yes?
It's okay. Dr. Rao, complete your sentence and then we'll bring in the Chinese perspective also on this.
Yeah, sure. So basically, I was just saying that I think we need to focus more on our bilateral relationship. I think this is long overdue and long, awaited. And frankly, I think that we should be making some progress on the fact that we have not really had the 2+2 dialogue ever since it was started in 2021 December, and it's not really happened. Similarly, our 10-year defense cooperation program that we signed has not really seen a real progress. And the trade deficit, everybody has mentioned already. So basically, we need these things to be tackled at the highest level, because these are important to our bilateral ties. And last point is that please remember that Prime Minister Modi has just come back to power, and the two most important things and priorities for him, one, of course, is economic progress, and that is why the huge trade deficit becomes, an issue that needs to be ironed out in the most, cordial manner. And the other thing is national security. And let's not forget that we are still awaiting the deliveries of the S-400s, and you cannot really leave that to chance. So I think that this is a mark of pragmatism. This is a mark of course, strategic autonomy. I think these are oft repeated, stances. But at the same time, this is something which should have happened earlier, in fact, because we can't be really
point on
things
what Swasti you said there, and Shaban, I'll hand over to you after that. I think this is a very important point. We have been very, very generous in allowing this trade imbalance with Russia to go to like 70 billion dollars. But it's been, as Swasti you've rightly pointed out, this is, I would presume that most of this is fueled by fuel. We've got to also make sure the Russians buy from India our pharmaceuticals. We should look upon Russia as an eager market, and the Russians should be also open to making it easier for Indian manufacturing, Indian machinery, Indian iron, Indian steel, Indian pharma, Indian toys, Indian products to be sold in America.
Or manufactured in India.
Yeah, I mean, I would say everything. Wherever the Americans exit, it should not be the Chinese who are going in and taking the place. India should be taking that place, and we should rightly ask for that. Shaban, over to you, Shaban. Yeah, Shaban.
In fact,